Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Odietis. This episode of Nos Odietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Odietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A sideline fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Ruidíaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going good!
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Porter says cheated!
You wanna win? This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome back to another episode of Nos Odietis, sponsored by Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter, and our subscribers. This is the question and answer episode for week 28 of the MLS season. I'm Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is Aaron Campo and our engineer, Lickett. Well, Aaron, let's just go ahead and jump right into these things. I should say, again, these are all, I think, from Substack, or not Substack, from our Discord, right?
They are from our Discord. I'm pretty sure I got all of them. If I did not, it's probably because we changed the way we're doing the questions in there. So if you're in the Discord, but you didn't see messages about it, there's now a different room to ask the questions in, because we want to encourage conversation, but we also want to make it possible for us to figure out where the actual questions are. So shouldn't be a problem going forward. If I did miss your question, I'm sorry.
And I'll also add, we've decided, I think this episode, we decided this is going to be a subscriber only feature that we're doing here. We're doing plenty of stuff on the main channel. We want to make sure that we are doing subscriber specific content. And so if you're a subscriber, there's a pretty good chance, there's a lot more subscribers than there are people in our Discord. And that's fine. There's nothing, if you don't want to be in the Discord, I don't want to make anyone get on the Discord. But if you are a supporter level or above, you also get access to the Discord, and you should take advantage of it. It's been kind of fun. There's a few hundred people in there. The chatter isn't going crazy or anything, but it's like a wide variety. It's a different kind of commenting experience.
Yeah.
And I've been finding it fun. I'm new to Discord myself.
Yeah, it's if you know, it's nice because it's there's plenty of chance to go off topic and have some community building without it being distracting from the main purpose of the comments section on the site, right, which is talking about the articles and whatnot. So yeah, it's fun. I recommend it. And this also means that if you ask a question in the Discord, we are going to do our best not to answer it there, because that kind of defeats the purpose of making this a subscriber only show. So don't be offended if we don't answer your questions there. Speaking of questions, first question is from Jeff Nusser. Nico was fantastic against Austin. How prepared should I be for him to start again on Saturday? And how prepared should I be for that to destroy all these good vibes?
I do think you should be prepared for him to start. I would be shocked. I don't know, shocked maybe is overstating it, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't start. I was a little surprised that he started this game. I was maybe even a little disappointed that he started this game, but I would agree he was really good. He stayed within himself. He didn't the game did not feel like it was forced through him to the degree it flowed through him. It felt natural and within the context of what it was meant to be. He obviously had the assist. He had the shot that are we calling that a shot? It must have been a shot, right? The game winning play.
Yeah.
That was a shot, so. Right? It
was a shot. Yeah.
Well, and whatever it was, he started, his play is what started the sequence that led to the goal. And he was just, I thought he was very effective. He only, I think he had something like 56 passes, which is a lot for a normal player, but not so much for a Nico Ladero. And I liked him. I think at this point I would be. I can't blame Brian for if he starts against Portland. I can't blame him. He's in good enough shape that he should be able to. I would imagine he can do this.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think that seeing him be willing to be a little bit less enthusiastic made me hopeful that maybe he is starting to kind of understand his limitations, or at least the need to, not limitations as such, but like the need to conserve himself, simplify things a little bit. He can't be the guy who plays 3 times a week every week and is all over the place every game anymore. It's just not feasible, but he can still be really effective, as we saw in this game. So I take that. This game in general, there were a lot of things where I'm not like ready to throw up my hands in celebration, but I think are reasonable to take as encouraging signs as long as they continue. And that was definitely one of them, that Nico was willing to change the way he plays a little bit. And it's hard to argue with the results.
This one is from Fat Monk Fullhead. Hypothetical: if Raúl is on instead of Jordan, does he score that goal off the free kick?
If the hypothetical also supposes that he's in Jordan's position and like you just freeze time and swap Raúl in, I think probably. I mean,
like he's capable of that finish, is what you're saying.
He's definitely capable of that finish, and he's scored plenty of goals like that in the past. I think, you know, that's one that I think you almost kind of wish Raúl had been on the field to score it, because if it's a confidence issue with him, that's one I feel pretty confident he can bury. But he wasn't on the field, and in large part because he hasn't been getting himself into good positions, and he's been making things a little harder on himself than he probably needs to. So I think yes, but I don't think that changes the fact that Jordan deserved the start, did what he needed to do, scored a goal, which Raúl has not been able to do. And I think just generally played a lot better than Raúl has been playing, and looked dangerous in ways that Raúl hasn't. And also I think maybe even more importantly, did things that Raúl has never been great at doing, but it was offset by his goal scoring ability. Was able to do just a little bit more dirty work than Raúl is really capable of. And I guess that's not really answering the question. You know, it's not the spirit of the question, but I think that in general, I'm happy Jordan scored that goal, because I think it makes it harder to put Raúl back in there.
Yeah, in my sort of on the heels of the other question, I would suspect that Jordan gets another start there. I tend to think that, you know, I did an interview with Brian Schmetzer on Tuesday, and one of the things he mentioned is that Raúl seems to be sort of understanding of his current predicament. And my suspicion is that he needs to sort of play his way back into the team. Yeah. And it's not like the Sounders are, I know sometimes it feels like the Sounders don't have any good options, but look through just like a slightly askew, they have more good options than they have more players who theoretically could be starters than they have starting spots. Right. And, you know, so when Raúl goes to the bench, what that means is that a Josh Atencio or an Obed Vargas gets more minutes. And I hope we have a Josh Atencio question somewhere in here, because I would really like to be able to talk about him. But
yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. And it's good to hear that Raúl seems at least understanding about what's going on, and not, you know, maybe not making a problem out of it, because that's always a tough situation. Next one is from Funky Hef. Bummer of a question, I'll just say. What's going on with Christian? I certainly don't want him to rush back, but I'm just worried about him, since that seems like a long recovery, and it's probably not a coincidence he had another concussion or went back into concussion protocol so quickly after his return. How does this compare to other folks recovering from concussions? Is there a chance we don't get to see him again this season? Is there a chance we don't get to see him again, period?
I would say that there is definitely room for concern on all these fronts. I am not a doctor. I can't really speak I don't have any specific insight into Christian's situation other than what Schmetzer has been saying. And, he sounded, when I talked to him, he sounded like he was concerned, or that there is a growing sense of concern. Apparently they thought he was sort of through the worst of it, and then he'll train for a few days, and then all of a sudden he'll have symptoms that will come back. So apparently he went and saw a specialist in Detroit, and hopefully they're going to be able to come up with some sort of like prescription, for lack of a better term, to get him right. My suspicion is that will just be rest. And like, this is probably one of those things where it's just going to take time. He's not going to play against Portland. They have 2 weeks off after that. I suppose it's possible that he is ready at that point. But if he's not, I think there has to be a real consideration for just giving him the peace of mind of taking the rest of the season off. Like, let's stop pretending like you're going to get right and play ultra safe, do stuff that you can control, and hopefully let's get you back for next season. Again, like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say that's what he should do. I don't know what he should do. Yeah. But I would think that if he's not able to be back after this, like for the game that comes after the Portland game, I think that's a discussion the Sounders will probably have to have.
Yeah. I think the one thing that makes me feel a little more hopeful about this is that the way concussions are approached has been changing pretty rapidly. And even in the last couple of years, I think that teams have just become more cautious and know a little bit more about concussions and recovery and how to manage them. So I think there's a good chance that 5 years ago, he would already be playing again. And that would just be something that he was playing through.
Yeah.
So that is, but it's definitely concerning.
So this question is from another one from Fat Monk Foolhead. What does the rest of the season look like with 4 points from 2 games? Those results make the Sounders suddenly look competent. However, I think anyone with a modicum of objectivity doesn't think this team is likely to make a deep playoff push. So at this point, what is the primary goal for Schmetzer and company? Is it just to get into the playoffs and hope to make a splash? Is it to give our aging vets one last hurrah? Is it to test our youth players more and give them some MLS minutes? I don't think these are all necessarily mutually exclusive, but I don't think you can realistically do all of them. So what should be expected to see in the last 7 games of the regular season?
I think that the goal for Brian Schmetzer and for the players is, considering the fact that they're in 3rd place in the West, tied on points for 2nd place, the goal has to be to get in the playoffs and win MLS Cup.
Yes.
You can't give up on a season. I don't care how bad they've been. You can't give up on a season when you're in that position. So that's what they have to be doing, right? But the question, I think, becomes, what is the best way to accomplish those goals? And I think the Austin game maybe gave a little bit of ammunition to the side that believes that the way to accomplish those goals is to make some pretty drastic changes and kind of force, like you said about Raúl, force some guys to play their way back into the lineup and be willing to trust younger players, be willing to give Josh Atencio more minutes, things like that maybe Brian hasn't been quite willing to do as of yet. And I think that that's the right way to do it. I'm certainly on that side, as I think most people probably have figured out by now. And that does give you the benefit of also being able to evaluate those players, right? Watching Atencio in that game and watching him a lot of the time, frankly, I kind of thought about what Ziggy always said about Lamar Nagel, which was like, it's good that we got in a situation where we had to play him because he never impressed me in training. He never, but he always shows up in the games. And so I trust him now and play him. And I don't know what Atencio looks like in training, but he always shows up when he plays. He's always, I think, very good. And I think he was great in this game. And so I think playing your good players is the way to go. And if those players happen to be younger, even better, right? Like if you can get a sense of where they are and how much they can help you next year, that's a win-win if they can help you win this year. But for Schmetzer and the team, it has to be winning as many games as they can. It's not a point in the season where the reasonable thing for the team to do is pack it in and give the kids as much playing time as possible just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I'll add the only part of that question I think that isn't mutually or is mutually exclusive is this idea that they would give the veterans one last hurrah. I don't frankly think that's not professional sports. That's certainly not the way that the Sounders look at things. I don't think any organization says, let's play a bunch of old guys just because we know they're not going to be here for very long. So let's give them their proper send off. Maybe there's one guy you might do that with, right?
Right.
I don't think that's part of the calculus. I think the calculus, like you said, is how do we win the most games? And the only question is, do you win the most games by injecting some youth into this team, or do you win more games by relying on your veterans? I think Brian's assumption or his natural bias is towards leaning on the veterans. And like you said, I think this game is some reason to question that. I do think there does become a point at which you have to sort of take like if the Sounders were to have gone, let's just say, pointless in this 7-point or this 9-point week, I think that would have been a pretty clear sign that, maybe what we need to do is just really focus on next season. If we make the playoffs, great. But the thing we really need to do is just focus on figuring out what we have, like which players are what we have on the roster and what we can do with them. And I think they bought themselves some more time to sort of like play it straight. And I think the only question is, are we better with Jordan at the 9? Are we better with Atencio in the midfield? Are we maybe even better with Reed Baker Whiting as a right mid? Are we maybe better with or a right back? Are we maybe better with Cody Baker at left back? These are questions that I don't think we necessarily have answers to yet, but these are the kinds of questions that I think are going to have to be asked.
Yeah. I think too, worth remembering, we have to watch this team, and I think most people mostly watch the Sounders. If they watch any other MLS, they're still mostly watching the Sounders. There's one good team in MLS this year, and that's Cincinnati.
There's a real, and it's funny to say because I know there's people that are like, oh no, Nashville's pretty good. Like you might want to look at some of their results recently. Miami's good. Okay, Miami looks really, really good right now.
They do.
Miami might not make the playoffs.
Right. I mean, they've got to make up 10 points in 12 games.
Like, there's just not a lot of like. If there was ever a year where you could just say like, look, we got to get into the playoffs and we'll just see how it goes after that.
Yeah.
This is that year.
There's no team in the West that I don't think the Sounders are capable of beating if they can get this kind of figured out.
Yeah, and I'll just I know there's been a lot of people that have been saying like, oh, look, if you look at the points per game, Sounders aren't as good as you think they are. Well, I'll tell you right now, the Sounders are tied for 3rd in the West on points per game.
Yeah,
and some of the teams that are like chasing them are teams that they've had a lot of success against this year. Houston, Vancouver, okay, Salt Lake, maybe not. Minnesota, those are the teams that were theoretically worried about passing the Sounders by. These are teams the Sounders have been beating head to head. So, I do think sometimes we have to take a step back and say like, okay, I understand how frustrating it's been. It's been very frustrating. This team has looked bad at times, but if you're telling me there's no objective way that you think that this team is going to go on a run and potentially like go deep in the playoffs, I disagree. I disagree.
Yeah. There is a world where the Sounders win MLS Cup.
Right.
Maybe not
it's likely. Right. Yeah.
But it's not as crazy as I think maybe it has felt at times.
Yeah.
Next one is from Chris. Reading Aurelio's ratings for the Atlanta game, going forward, for JP mentions finding someone who can work effectively with him. What kind of player would the front office be looking out for? Is it mainly just a matter of finding someone who would complement what JP's good and less good at? This is kind of your Atencio question, I think, maybe.
Yeah, this is sort of the Atencio question. And I think really the answer is probably somebody that does a lot of the same things that Josh Atencio or an Obed Vargas potentially. I think Atencio is doing them better, but I think it looks a lot like one of those two players. Like just frankly, like Albert Rusnak, I think worked fine as a partner for him. I think what we've learned is that for Albert Rusnak to be really effective as an 8, he needs someone to be in a double pivot he needs someone to do a lot of the defensive work for him.
Yeah.
And that's just, and I think that's just a reality. Like the best part of his game is not out there making tackles and winning duels. That's just not who he is. Now he can do it in a pinch and be kind of effective, but if you're expecting Albert Rusnak to be one of your key defensive cogs in the defensive middle, you're going to get run over. That's the way it is. He's a very good player, but that's not the way he's going to be deployed best. You need someone that's going to be able to do some of that defensive work just higher up the pitch. And I think that's probably Josh Atencio or Obed Vargas. And I think whether or not it's one of those two players, it's someone that has a lot of those same attributes.
Yeah, there are a decent amount of players with that skill set that I love Atencio. I like Vargas a lot as well. I would be happy if they were starting in that role. But if you think that the Sounders can and should do better there are plenty of options that have that sort of classic 8 skill set that could be pretty intriguing, I think.
And I'll add, I thought Obed Vargas was pretty good yesterday too.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything that he did that. Then he replaced JP. I think it's possible that, I think the only reason you don't necessarily want to lean too heavily into this is because I don't know how long, like even in a best case scenario, like how long you keep that pairing together.
Right.
And so I think it's probably worth trying to get one of them to be a workable partner for JP. And, if it's me, I want to start Atencio against the Timbers. And he brings so much energy. He brings so much, willingness to drive forward and to push the action. And I just think that adds so much to the tempo of the game, and it makes the Sounders work a lot better.
Yeah.
All right. This is from the Trialist. He says, is the front office worried about declining attendance and enthusiasm? I know multiple season ticket members who aren't renewing or letting sales people know this is their last year unless play on the field improves.
I mean, I think, Jeremiah, I'm sure you have better insight to this than I do, but I'm sure that they have noticed that attendance has gone down and hasn't come back since the pandemic ended, or the more restrictive phase of the pandemic ended. And, I'm sure that they're aware of these things and they have to be concerned about them. I'm sure, but I think that every year that the Sounders have existed, people have complained and said they were canceling their season tickets. I've known people every year that have done it. And I'm not trying to pretend like attendance hasn't gone down, and that's a real thing. And I think that the pandemic was certainly a part of that. And I think live attendance at a lot of things has gone down and hasn't quite recovered. But I do think that the Sounders also made some conscious business decisions about how they were going to do things that did not prioritize on a lot of levels, but my job isn't maximizing revenues for the team. Right. So and that's not to say that you can't say that's a bad decision, because
absolutely. Yeah.
I think it sucks. I would much rather them take a little bit of a revenue hit and have the stadium full. But I think that the business side of the Sounders knows what they're doing. I think a lot of people see decline in attendance and say, well, they can't be making as much money as they were. I think they probably are making more money now than they ever have been, would be my guess.
Yeah, that's sort of my suspicion too. And I do think there's also a little bit of I don't want to say a red herring in this, because I don't think it's completely false. But I think the issue with attendance, I think, has a lot more to do with the business decisions. And it just so happens that the play on the field has also not been great. But I think if you look at the 15 years or whatever, 14 years of data that we have on the Sounders, results and attendance are not really they're not as related as you might assume they are.
Yeah.
Like some of their best, like 2014 was their best on-field season. And at the time, if I remember correctly, they actually saw a decline that year in attendance. And so we've seen these trends where they don't quite match up the way that you would expect them to. So maybe it's a lagging issue.
Yeah.
But I think we are able to take out our frustrations oftentimes on, look, you're not playing well, I'm going to not renew my season tickets. I think most people are if you really get down to it, it's an economic decision. It's a life decision. It's something else. The play on the field sometimes makes the decision feel easier and feel better. But I guess what I'm saying is the front office and the business side are not like in the front office side is not saying we don't really need to win. And the business side is not saying is there's not someone on the business side saying like, no, actually you do need to win. You're right. Like, these are like, they're not, I guess what I'm saying is the front office wants to win games and the business office wants to make money. And obviously you want both of those things to happen. But I think sometimes we oversell how much those two entities are like working in conjunction.
Yeah. If the Sounders are bad for 5 years in a row, attendance is going to go in the toilet. Like, I do not doubt that. And everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But they, I agree. Next one is from Connor. Any news on what we can expect from the 50th season refresh? Sounds like we're not going to get major changes, but do you have any more details? I saw they added a 50 ball logo to the season ticket member scarf for next season. But is there anything else you've seen? Would it be wishful thinking to hope for a retro third kit?
Well, I guess it depends on what you think are major changes. I am very confident that there's going to be a new crest. I think they're probably going to tweak the colors. They're not going to have a new name. The new crest, I don't think is going to be a huge departure from what we currently know of as the Sounders brand. But there will be very visible changes. I don't know if there's going to be a third kit. I think a retro third kit would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I have not heard that there's going to be one. You would think with all these third kits coming out that the Sounders would be among the candidates to get one. They apparently are one of the best selling jerseys every year. The Bruce Lee kit was apparently their best ever selling jersey. So you would think this is like a license to print money.
Yeah.
So you would think that they would want a third kit. I don't have any inside information on that though.
Yeah. I would be shocked if they didn't have one. That there's obviously I don't have any.
Seems it would defy logic if they didn't, but
Stranger Things.
Green Caribou wants to know, while most of the attention is rightfully focused on the big changes coming at the top of the roster with all three of Tevez, Rothrock, and Double Air, plus maybe Reed, Baker, Whiting, it feels like the back end of the roster is getting a little crowded on the right. How do they fit or not fit for next season? Might more loans like Leyva's be in the future? P.S. Since I wasn't on Twitter, this is my first time submitting a question. Oh,
yeah, that's great.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It's nice. Using Twitter for the questions for as many years as we did certainly made sense, but there were drawbacks to it. And now, that it is the way it is, it's nice to have one.
I loved
look like that on there.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No.
I was talking all over you. I love how the people that asked the questions on Twitter were great. They gave us a lot of good stuff. Reality was it was a lot of the same people, which is fine. But this does seem to be allowing for some more different types of participation.
Agree. And I also like people seem more willing to talk about this stuff in the Discord, not to keep plugging the Discord, but there's a lot of discussion in there in the forums about these questions, and reading some of the discussion has definitely like made me think about some things, and having the questions have some time to breathe instead of putting out a call for questions and then seeing the questions for the first time 5 minutes before we start recording.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice. Anyway, to the question.
There was a question in there.
There was a question. I think with Rothrock, I am so happy that he got a senior contract, and I think that he has a valuable role to play on this team. I don't get the sense that he is a player that is likely to impact much of anything in terms of decisions that are being made, if that makes sense. Like, he's a depth option that can play a couple of different attacking spots. And so I don't think that him being there is much, like, that's just the kind of guy you have to have on an MLS roster, right? Like, you need a couple of guys like that. And I don't know that if like, Rothrock isn't getting enough minutes, I don't think that that's a concern necessarily. But with guys like Tevez and Dobler and Reed Baker-Whiting, and obviously that's a little bit more of a concern, especially I think with Reed Baker-Whiting, because he's being scouted by these teams and he has to play, right? And he probably should be playing at a level higher than MLS Next Pro if he's going to make a move. So I think there's a good chance that one or more of those players is gone next year because they've been sold. I think it seems not crazy to think Reed Baker-Whiting is more likely to be sold than not before next season. So yeah, we'll see. But I think loans also would be an option for sure.
I think there's a pretty good chance that all four of those players are not on the roster for one reason or another. I don't know how much the Sounders are really like worried about finding minutes for especially Tevez, Rothrock, and Dobler. That's not to say that they don't have a future, but I think they're at the point in their career where any minutes they get have to be totally earned. Like there's no we got to give this guy minutes because he needs to develop. It's is he winning minutes in training? Give him minutes. And I would like to think that was why Dobler played, was because he was showing out in training, and that's what and the reason Rothrock got that contract is because he was, he won that contract. When Dylan Tevez gets on the field, it's because they think Dylan Tevez belongs on the field. Reed is maybe in a slightly different category, but again, like he needs to win his minutes. I think he's doing that. I think he's making, and I do think that Reed's a player who you got to kind of find minutes for one way or another.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, it's the thing about the academy that's always tough, especially when it gets to the point where the Sounders Academy is at now, is that the reality is that most players are never going to become pros. And the ones that become pros, most of them are never going to have long careers. And the ones that have long careers, most of them are never going to be like indispensable cornerstone.
Right. Yeah. You get very attached at seeing guys get to the sort of the first team. And then once they're at the first team, it's like, okay, well, like, do your thing.
Yep. Next one is from Chris R. Smith. I'm wondering if there's been any news from Colorado or Seattle regarding the loan of Danny Leyva. How has he been doing? What are the chances he has sold to Colorado or some other team versus staying with Seattle?
So the only updates we've gotten about Danny Leyva are that Colorado made a decision to keep him at the trade or at the roster freeze deadline, or not the roster freeze, the close of the transfer window. So they had to make an affirmative choice to keep him, and they wanted to keep him. So that's good. He's not playing a ton. He's going to end up playing less at Colorado this year than he played for the Sounders last year. Whether or not that's how much of a problem that is, I suppose, is worth discussing. But he's getting minutes. He's got he has 5 starts, first team start or first MLS starts. That's more than he was on pace to get here. I think the reality is that while he was here, he was definitely behind both Atencio and Vargas, and some other veterans potentially. So in that way, I think it's good. I don't know how likely it is that he gets sold. He is under contract for like 3 more years or 2 more seasons at least, I think, guaranteed. So the Sounders do control his rights. I would be lying though if I said I hadn't really a good sense of what's going to happen to him after this year.
Yeah.
This is from Kolobos. He says, if the Sounders were to get a U22, go to the U22 route for signing DPs, how many would you sign and what positions? What position would you sign full DPs to?
I mean, I think that all depends on who you're scouting, who's available, blah, 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 right? But like if we're talking blue sky, perfect world, I probably would not want more than one U22 DP unless I was absolutely convinced that they were going to be like, you can have one guy who kind of is in that Leo Chu role of like lottery ticket, might take a couple of years and be okay with that. More than one of those guys, and I think you're kind of hurting yourself. So if you can go sign a 21-year-old who is going to like be written in ink in your starting lineup, sure. Not super likely though, I think, with where MLS is in the development hierarchy worldwide. So I would really only want one of those guys. And if you can find a can't miss 20-year-old center back that's worth a DP spot, like, sure, but the odds of that are much lower than finding an attacking player. I mean, I think there's a reason that most of the U22 DPs in the league are attacking players, and it's because they tend to peak the earliest and they have the most potential for becoming good investments, right? So yeah, I think Leo Chu it took him a while, but I think a great example of what you can maybe hope to get from the U22 DP, although you can certainly do better even than Leo Chu, right? Like somebody can make you a huge profit, which I don't know that Leo Chu is ever going to do.
Yeah, I think the upside for Chu right now is, he develops into a very useful player for the Sounders, and maybe you can trade him for allocation money within the league. I don't see the Sounders recouping his transfer fee right now, though.
No, but I think with the way he's played this year, if he can play that well or bring back big assets in a trade, I think I'm okay with the transfer fee they paid for him. Right?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a bad investment.
Right, but it hasn't been a investment the way that some U22 players,
or the way that kind of Garth talked about it being part of the what do you call it, the
development.
No, he said it like we're playing the world's game. I don't know. It was some Tyrion line from.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. It's been an okay signing.
Yeah.
I think it does illustrate sort of the challenge of this particular type of this kind of player. But yeah, if I'm the Sounders, first of all, there's no real competitive reason to sign more than one young DP. Yeah. Essentially, that's what you're talking about there. And if you were going to sign that one young DP, I would think you would sign another winger forward type. To me, that's what I would do. That's probably what I would do with that. If you're going to spend, and then you can sign with the more classic U22 spots. You can put them I think that's more inclined. Would I be more inclined to sign a center back to, or a number 10, more project types that if they don't pan out. High upside, not necessarily huge risk, but it's a challenge. I mean, that's what there's not been a lot of super successful signings like this in MLS that, sort of thread that needle. Thiago Almada being one of the big exceptions, right? That's the guy that looks like they might end up getting a record transfer fee for. So who knows?
They had to pay a lot of money for him too. I mean, that's the other side.
They did.
And Atlanta's model is to flip players for money, so they're willing to make bigger investments than maybe the Sounders are.
Or at least that was their model.
It was.
I'm not sure. We'll see how the model changes, because the signings they've been making under Garth have not been quite such big swing, and a little bit more. Let's put some of this money on the field. Kind of. Let's
actually win some games.
Yeah.
Crazy to think about, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Next one is from Sean Wheeler. You talked in this mailbag episode, I'm assuming the last one. Some of these questions were asked before the good results of the last few games. I do think it's important to point that out. You talked in this mailbag episode about Schmetzer being gone next year far more than my emotional brain was ready for, but looking at it objectively, I do see where that's a real possibility. How much do you think the big celebration of 50 years will play into that decision, or any other decisions on the technical side of the house? I guess what I'm trying to say is, can they fire Schmetzer, then spend the next year talking about the importance of family and history?
Well, I'll answer the first part just straight up. I don't see how those are, unless we really literally think the Sounders are a family and they are more focused on history than they are on their present. I would hope that they can fire Schmetzer if the results demand it, and still talk about family and history and all these kind of things. Schmetzer is a huge part of the Sounders lore, of the Sounders family, of however you want to put it. But if you think that makes him unfireable, I'm not quite sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think Brian Schmetzer is going to get fired. If they play like they did against Austin, this is not a concern.
Yeah.
But in this hypothetical where, the results are effectively demanding that he be let go, you have to let him go. Like that's just like they can't be bound to anyone, frankly.
Yeah.
The way that well, it doesn't matter how bad the results are. This is our guy. Like that can't be how they run this team. I don't think anyone really wants them to run this team, and I don't know that Sean is suggesting that. But I'll just put that out there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know. I'm of two minds. On one hand, I tend to think that the technical side is aware of everything going on for next year, but I don't think that's what's going to drive any of their decisions. You could tell me that the Sounders want to find a way. They want an excuse to bring back Brian Schmetzer. Maybe that excuse is just get into the playoffs so that we can bring it back next year. That I would believe that. I don't know if that's true, but if you told me that was the case, I wouldn't straight up say there's no way.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, I don't think Brian is probably the only person who gets any consideration on that level. I don't necessarily think if they bring Freddie Montero back next year, geez, I really hope it's not because of the 50th anniversary. If they bring back Kellen Rowe next year, I hope it's not because of the 50th anniversary. If it's Stephen Fry, I hope it's not just because of the 50th anniversary. I would like to think all of those decisions are going to be made independent of the 50th anniversary.
Yeah. I would also say that I think that whether or not the 50th anniversary is happening would be irrelevant to the decision that they make about Schmetzer, because I think that they are likely to really want him to come back anyway.
Right.
I think,
yes,
I think that you and I don't want to speak for you, but I think our position is really, I want Brian Schmetzer to come back.
Right.
I want him to be the coach forever because he's winning and performing really well as a coach. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm also I'm not going to ignore reality, right? If the Sounders go on another losing streak and the results demand that he lose his job, then I mean, that's what should happen. Right. So, but I have little doubt that most people in the organization are rooting for him to get it turned around.
Right.
And maybe it makes it a little sweeter if he can do that and come back for the 50th anniversary. But I don't think that that's the reason. I think it's just going to be because people like Brian a lot and want him to succeed, and they don't want to have to, to lose him. But yeah, otherwise I think you're spot on, right? It's kind of what we talked about with the marketing side of the team and ticket sales and the business side of the team earlier, right? Where it's everyone's aware of what's happening on either side of the aisle, but really they have different remits. And
yeah, I guess what I would say the team is more focused on is I think they feel like they need to hit 2025. I think they're looking at 2024 as a big year for them.
Yeah.
And it's more important to put out a good team and to ride the momentum of all the attention that you're going to be bringing on yourself for a variety of reasons. They've set next year up to be a big year for on a lot of fronts. There's going to potentially be a lot of roster turnover. There's going to be the training center. There's going to be this 50th anniversary celebration. There's a lot going into this year. And I think they're much more focused on how do we make 2024 successful. And if we can do it with a bunch of faces that we can say, look at all, Stephen Fry has been here for 12 years. He's been 10 years, whatever it is. That's a nice thing to be able to say, but it's more important to have a goalkeeper that's going to win you games. And maybe that's Steph Fry. That might well be Steph Fry, but that's what has to be your reasoning is you can't, I would think if anything next year, they can't afford to be too sentimental about the decisions.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. This is from Levexcellent. Great name.
Great name. Good name.
We haven't gotten a lot of Levesque puns lately.
Yeah, that used to be every third.
Right, exactly.
Every third question. But
I believe the Seahawks lease ends in 2028. What are the chances they vacate for a new stadium elsewhere in the area and the Sounders renovate Lumen Field into the soccer fortress we deserve?
I used to think the odds of this were really good, and I have come around to thinking that they're really bad. I think there's a chance that the Seahawks move to the suburbs, and a lot of it depends on what happens with the team, right? Because I know there's a point at which the Allen Trust has to sell the team, I think. I don't know when that is exactly, but I think that downtown stadiums are still very much in vogue, even in the NFL. It's a great location. The way the region's transit network is set up, downtown Seattle is always going to be the hub of it, and it's pretty hard to get other places by transit. But I think that there's a very good chance that Lumen is either redone to the degree that it's unrecognizable, or they build a new stadium. I hope they don't build a new stadium because that seems like a huge waste. I would really prefer they go the rebuild route. But so I think that the odds that the Sounders are just going to get Lumen to do whatever they want with are pretty low, I would say. And I'm not basing that on anything other than just my hunch. Like, I don't have any information about that. But I do think there's a chance that they redo Lumen in a way that makes it a better fit for the Sounders. And maybe that means doing grass trays. Maybe they find a way to do that in a rebuilt Lumen, or, maybe it means they bring the seating a little closer to the field. I don't know. But I personally, from my perspective as like I don't want to say urbanist, because a lot of urbanists are very annoying, but I will. For the purpose of this, like, I like mixed use stadiums, right? Like, they don't take up a lot of space. It's not as much public money going to it. It's not as many tax breaks going to it. It simplifies transit, all that stuff, right? Like, so I think that 2 tenants using the stadium is great, but I understand why it's not ideal for soccer and why it's not ideal for the Sounders. So if you can find a solution that makes it a little bit better suited for the Sounders, although I think Lumen currently is not a bad fit by any stretch, while keeping it there and not moving the Seahawks out to Maple Valley or something where everybody has to drive to get to the stadium and it's isolated, I think that's a much better outcome.
I will only add that nothing about Lumen Field strikes me as unfixable from a Sounders perspective. The Sounders have real gripes, I think, legitimate gripes about Lumen Field and the way that they are still really treated as tenants, and they are tenants. That's the reality, and they are reminded of this regularly. You can go through the list. There's no permanent locker space for them. There is no every renovation that gets done to the stadium is focused on how does this work for the Seahawks, and maybe the Sounders can use it. Like right now, there is currently a big renovation going on in the sort of like the guts of Lumen Field. I think around what's called what used to be called like the club field, or the press club or something like that. It was like that area in the corner, and they've been renovating that, and basically it's going to be these high priced seats where the players walk out in front of these high priced seats, and they get to and they go through this like tunnel, and the fans get to see that. That's not going to be something that the bar area might be something that Sounders fans get to use, but the part where the players walk through is not going to be a thing that the Sounders experience. And there's like a whole host of these changes that are throughout the stadium that are really not geared towards the Sounders, but they could, if they chose to, they could turn all the ad boards into LED boards that they can flip to be Sounders or Seahawks. They can do a lot of stuff in the stadium. They can, if they want to, they can absolutely put in and figure out a way to maintain a grass field. They can put in safe standing in the Brom end, and they can swap it out every time they want to use it for the Seahawks. These are things that they could do if their will was there. Now, will they? I don't know. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is the Sounders don't need the Seahawks to leave. They just need to get they need to have a more equal footing inside their stadium. All that said, if one team is going to leave, I tend to think it's like still like I used to think it was probably be the Seahawks because they'd go build their own Jerry World somewhere. At this point, I would probably guess that the Sounders would be the team that's more likely to leave. The cost of them building their own facility is a lot smaller. And it could potentially be out at Long Acres. Who knows? So I don't know. I think the smart money is that both teams are there for a long time. Yeah. But who knows? Yeah.
I hope so. I really hope so. The Sounders playing at Long Acres would be a huge bummer to me.
I will say that's on. It is connected to the train line.
It's connected to a train line. Yeah, I mean it's.
I mean, if you've ever, I will say this: that if the decision is ever made to make the Sounder a real commuter rail, it's a really nice location.
Yeah,
and I have taken the train from King Street Station to Tukwila, and it's like 10 minutes. It's shocking how close it is.
They do not even run trains for Sounders games.
I know. I'm just saying they could if they wanted to.
They could. They certainly a lot of coulds in this.
Yes, exactly.
Response to this question. All right, our last one is another one from the Trialists. When is the next YachtCon?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. I would like to say that it will be this next off season, and I think we're gonna. That's my goal. I mean, this is maybe news to you. My goal is to do YachtCon ahead of next season, sort of pick up where we left off with the last real YachtCon, which was in 2020. And if we can find a facility, if we can make the schedule work, that's my intention. I would like to think we're going to have more live events one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's a big blowout like YachtCon, I can't guarantee at this point, but that's definitely the goal. That's the intention.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the last time we talked about this on the show, we said that people should let us know if it's something they're interested in.
Yeah. And we did try to actually do it last year. You may remember. And I'll be honest, like the response was not super encouraging and we didn't do it. So that kind of tells you where things were there. But if people really want to do it.
Right. It does. I will say that this year has felt more like
a normal year than last year did. Like last year was like most people were back to doing. Yeah, it was too early to bring it back.
So I think, I'm a little more optimistic for this year, but even if we don't do YachtCon, I'd certainly be, down for doing more smaller scale public events at some point as well. So
yeah.
Well, but I would also really like to do another YachtCon. So
it was fun. I am bummed that Hales Palladium doesn't appear to be a venue anymore. I don't think it's going to be a venue anymore. It was like kind of a perfect spot.
Yeah,
I wish, and if there's a equivalent thing to that would be really ideal.
Yeah,
because it was cheap and it was big and it was set up to be a real venue space.
Yeah, and it was nice. It was nice. Anyway, we'll figure something out.
We will. That's we can do that. All right. Well, I think that's the show. Thanks for listening. We have a game. Really, like we're probably going to release this on Saturday, so the game is going to be tonight. I hope people are ready for that. Yeah, me too. I'm ready. I'll be at Bumbershoot actually. So you are? Yeah. I'm not going on. I don't think I'm going on Saturday, but I'm going to go. I do have tickets to Saturday. And I'm going to go Sunday. Yeah. We're gonna see. We're gonna see if we go Sunday. We would like to. There's some bands we want to see, but the bands we're like committed to seeing are all Saturday. I assume Sleater Kinney is one of the bands that you're really. No. I'll go see Sleater Kinney, but my wife's not super into them. Screaming Females is the big one. Okay. That was the main reason that I was like, maybe I do want to go to Bumbershoot, but I think we're gonna try to see Morgan and the Organ Donors, and if we go Sunday, we'll probably go see the Dandy Warhols. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But it's the first time I will have been to Bumbershoot since 2004, I think. Oof. It's been a while. First year we moved to Seattle, we went, and I said, I'm never doing that again. Yeah, but I know that. So I've never been to a Bumbershoot, but I feel like this year's lineup was sort of made with people my age are probably pretty into this lineup. I think so. And it was pretty affordable. It's scaled back quite a bit. Like the reason I didn't like going to the last few was it was like trying to be like Bonnaroo or something, or like, and it was just too much. Like the headliners was like, Sheryl Crow. And no offense to Sheryl Crow, but so this feels more like Bumbershoot was when I first started going in the mid 90s. So did they used to have, not to get too sidetracked here, but did they used to hold concerts in Memorial for Bumbershoot, or was that? Did. Yeah, Memorials were the main stage was, so that was like where Beck would play, or Sheryl Crow, or and so that they're not using that this year.
I don't believe so.
It's all like in the pavilion sort of space.
Yeah, it's much more scaled down. I mean, it used to be like there were like hundreds of bands playing.
Wow.
It was crazy. So it was a little much. But I'm trying to, in my post-cancer, post-COVID mindset, I'm trying to be optimistic about it and excited about being around that many people. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll see you there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I know. I'm also bummed that we're recording this before the media game.
Oh, when is that?
It's tomorrow.
You're playing, I'm assuming?
I am playing. I'll see how long I can go, but
yeah, I
am going to suit up and be there.
Well, Godspeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get another meme out of it.
Right. That's really the goal. That's the goal is getting a meme out of it.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, I guess we should sign off. I'm Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Aaron and Lickett. Thank you to our sponsors, Full Pull Wines, Watson's Counter. Of course, thank you to our subscribers and especially our Discord members because they're making this all possible. So hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, well, you'll never be all alone.
We love you. Let's win another one.